Hello, church family. My name's Rob. Welcome back to yet another Daily Hope Devo. Today we find ourselves in John chapter 10. In the 1990s, international marketers had some monumental cross-cultural miscommunication blunders concerning brand names and slogans. The name Coca-Cola in China was first rendered as Ke-ku-kela. Unfortunately, the Coke company didn't discover until after thousands of signs had been printed that the phrase actually meant bite the wax tadpole. So Coke then researched 40,000 Chinese characters and found a close phonetic equivalent, Coca-Cola, which can be loosely translated as happiness in the mouth. The reason why I share that with you is because I believe that, and one of the things I love about Jesus, about the God that we serve, is that I believe he wants so desperately to communicate to each of us in a way that we can clearly understand. And so I think it's appropriate and fitting that this passage in John 10 is titled The Good Shepherd and His Sheep, because Jesus was speaking at that time primarily to an agrarian society. It was a culture that was well-versed in, farming culture and the ways of sheep and shepherding. They were able to easily identify with what Jesus was talking about. But for us in 21st century, Southern California, Carlsbad, not a whole lot of us are really well versed in agrarian society. So there's a few things that are important for us to understand. The first thing is when Jesus starts this passage in John chapter 10, it's actually a rebuke to the religious leaders of the time. And he talks about a sheepfold. One thing that's important to know about a sheepfold is it was this kind of big pen where a lot of different sheep from a lot of different shepherds would just kind of hang out. At the entrance of this sheepfold was a gate. And you actually, as a shepherd, you would have to check in with the gatekeeper. And so he would, vouch for you, say, yep, okay, you're a shepherd. I know some of these sheep are yours. Come on in. And then the shepherd would call out his sheep, and they, being able to recognize his voice, would come to them, and he would take them out of the gate. And so Jesus is saying that he says, I am the gate. Everyone else who's come before me, religious leaders, I don't know what you guys are on, but if you are not recognizing that I am the Messiah, I'm the gate, you're actually a thief, you're actually a robber, because you're not entering through me, you're not entering through the gate. And so that's how he starts this passage. And then he says that the sheep, again, are able to recognize the shepherd by name. Now, one thing that's important to know about sheep is, yes, we are compared to them in the Bible. Yes, they're not the smartest animals. Yes, like all of us, they are prone to wander and go astray. But one gift that sheep have, one thing that they're really good at, is being able to know and discern and recognize and identify the voice of their shepherd. They can pick out their shepherd's voice from among thousands of other voices. One thing that sheep are really, really good at. And so Jesus is saying that my sheep know my name. They won't follow a stranger, verse 5. They'll actually run from him because they don't know his voice. And I love that. I love that. And he's saying that if you are my sheep, you will know my voice. You won't follow these other guys. You won't follow these false religious leaders. You won't follow, fill in the blank. You're going to follow me if you're my sheep, because you'll recognize my voice. And then in verse 11, he calls himself the good shepherd. And he describes what a good shepherd is. And he makes this contrast between a good shepherd and a hired hand, someone who just is there for the paycheck. And he's saying the hired hand, someone who's there for false motives. The sheep, they could care less about their sheep. When trouble hits, when the wolf comes in, when deception hits, like when fill in the blank, he says the hired hand's going to flee at the first sign of danger. The hired hand's not going to stick around because the hired hand doesn't really love his sheep. He says the good shepherd, which Jesus says is him, he is the good shepherd. He says he loves his sheep. He will lay down his life for his sheep. He will sacrifice for his sheep, because his sheep know his voice and they are his own. What's a really cool thing I kind of found when I was researching this passage is that sheep in Eastern culture, in ancient Israel, they were much like our dogs and our cats, and in the sense that their shepherds actually had names for them. They named their sheep. It wasn't just sheep 1, sheep 2. It was like, hey, Fred and George and whatever other sheep names there are. They had names for their sheep. They had a relationship with their sheep. And so it was this very personal connection. And so Jesus is again, he's comparing himself to a good shepherd, and he knows his sheep by name, and his sheep know him. They know his voice. And what a beautiful picture that is of our relationship with him. He is the only way to the Father. Jesus is the gate. He is the only way into relationship with God. And it is through faith, the Bible says, through faith in Jesus that we can enter into the presence of God. It is by faith that we as sheep can be with the Good Shepherd. And we are to model our lives after the Good Shepherd. The Bible says, greater love has no one than this, that he laid down his life for his friend. And so us modeling the Good Shepherd are to lay down our lives. We're to sacrifice for one another, and we are to genuinely love one another the same way that Jesus, the Good Shepherd, has loved each of us, has called each of us out by name, has had and has an intimate relationship with each of us. So my prayer and my blessing for all of us watching today, and for myself included, is that we would fall more deeply in love with the Good Shepherd, that we would learn to recognize his voice more and more clearly each and every day, and that when he calls, we would obey, that we would listen, that we would follow, because Jesus promises life, and he promises life abundant. The NLT says rich and satisfying life. Green pasture life. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, doesn't mean it's going to be long, but it means that it will be good, rich, and fulfilling, because he is good, rich, and fulfilling, and he is our green pasture. I love you, church family. Can't wait to see you again. God bless.